And a very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Issues and Attitudes. My name is Jeff Owens, director at WEIU Radio and Television. My co-host is actually in the other room because we have so many guests. She's going to work on something else for the station. So, Scott Smith, introduce yourself.
Scott Smith, City Manager.
Steve Pamprin, City Planner, City Charleston.
Beth Gillespie, Civic Engagement and Volunteerism.
I'm Kristen Hawley, the Assistant Superintendent for Student Services in Charleston.
There you go. And if you're watching on TV in the corner, we don't want to forget Blake, the intern for the City of Charleston, who, by the way, from that tune. So I had to throw that out there. I guess we'll just open this up. We're going to talk about the census and why is it so important. So let's just throw that out there. Why is Census 2020 so important to this, not just Charleston, but really the whole community of Coles County if we talk a little bit bigger? So.
Sure, and maybe we can kind of take a step back. So, City of Charleston has been working on the 2020 census, for the last couple of years now. It started about a year ago with what we call our local update of address database. And we were working on that last year, making sure that all 9,000 addresses were appropriately into the census database so everybody could get a flyer and get, announced that the census was coming. Over the last few months, we have put together what's called a complete count committee for the City of Charleston, and it's representative of several different agencies and groups within the City of Charleston. And we recognize here in the city that obviously census is a very important part of the community. It means local dollars, it means state dollars, it means federal dollars. There's a lot of grants that we do. I know from a school perspective, there's a lot that the numbers really ride on. So having a complete and accurate count is a really important thing for the City of Charleston and for the county and the community as a whole.
Anybody want to add anything to that?
Sure. He mentioned the grants. The school district relies on federal title grants for primarily for Title I services, which are reading and math interventions for struggling students. There's also a Title IV grant that supports safe and healthy schools and well-rounded and for professional development for teachers. But all those title grant funds are based on our census data.
So what's the next step then in this process? Is it census taking? Is there still other steps before we get there?
Yeah, so like we talked about, there is what's called a complete count committee that we formed here in the City of Charleston. And this group has been meeting for the last several months. And really one of the primary focuses of this group is outreach and marketing and just letting folks know that the census is coming and letting them know how important it is to the community. So right now we're at the complete count committee step in the process. We'll be doing this for the next several months into early next year. And then April 1st of next year is actually the census day. Okay. So that's the day where people actually are counted. And we'll talk a little bit more, why it's so important to Eastern, the university, and the city and how those all tie together. But also to add on, as far as the importance of it to the City of Charleston, in addition to the funding, obviously having an accurate count is important, but if you do look at it in terms of just dollars, the City of Charleston has what's called state shared revenues, and our state shared revenues that we collect, they are based on a per capita or how many people you have in a community. So in a nutshell, what the state does is they pool all of these different funding things together into one big pool, and then they divvy that back up to the municipalities based on how much your population is. So the higher your population, the bigger part of that pool that you get. And what we do with that money, and Scott can obviously talk about this more, but that goes into our general fund, and a lot of times, whether it's for new sidewalks or a new ambulance, or it does also go into our MFT as far as road work and these kind of things. So having an accurate count and making sure that everybody's counted is critically important to our budget, to our general fund, and to our motor fuel tax projects.
So over the next few months, you'll be getting the word out and then letting people know on April 1st. Now, is I remember in the past people used to walk by your house and hand you stuff. Is that still part of it, or is it online, or how do people actually next April 1st take the census?
Sure.
Or do the census?
I can talk about that.
Okay.
So new this year, you're going to be able to take the census online, which has never happened before, so that's pretty exciting. You will still get a paper copy sent to your house, and then what's the third way? Help me out.
Well, what'll happen is if you don't get counted, then they do go to door, and they actually count people by hand. So Beth is right. Online and by mail are the two primary ways to get the census information back.
Mm-hmm.
The last census, what was it? Well, let's talk Charleston since everybody's here. Charleston. What was the number in? I guess 2010.
2010. Our population was 21,838. So it would be nice, hopefully, if we can kind of keep around that number. And as you know, the Eastern students are part of Charleston's number.
You read my mind, Steve, which isn't hard, I know.
And that's why really I appreciate, we appreciate being here on Eastern's radio, because getting the word out to the college students that they count in Charleston. Because again, it's where you reside on April 1st is where you are counted. But even as important as that is, the majority of the year the students are here in Charleston. So getting all the students counted here will help for them as well, for sidewalks and safe route to Eastern and all these things that we're trying to do. So making sure that the Eastern students know it's critically important that they are counted in Charleston census information as well. So 21,838 or 848 was our number last year, and we're hoping that we can hold steady around that number.
Well, if the students can do it online, that will help, because
Absolutely.
they don't go anywhere without that phone
Right.
in one of those hands, right?
Yeah, and also and to let the students know that everybody who's residing, especially the harder part, the more critical part, I suppose, is the off-campus students. Those are the ones that we want to make sure that if there are 4 classmates, 4 students living in the house, that all 4 of them are counted, and not just the one who's doing the census questionnaire, that all 4 of them are counted, because each one of them is an individual that needs to be counted. But yeah, so we're really putting a big push on the off-campus area. And if you look back 10 years ago, the off-campus census tracts were the ones that we had a little bit lower participation rate, and we're really trying to get the word out to them to make sure that they get counted. The good thing on campus is we're able to use a lot of the information Eastern has as far as the dorm numbers, that sort of thing. But off-campus, we're really putting a big marketing effort there.
Let's go over to Scott for a second. When you talk about the money and what it means for an accurate count, or really the highest count possible, is what you look at that way. What does that mean for Charleston if you get the count you want, and then also if the count comes in lower? What does that mean?
Well, like Steve had indicated, shared revenue sources from Springfield to the city of Charleston are vitally important to the city's general fund. So the kinds of departments that work within the general fund would include police, fire, Steve's department, general administration, parks, recreation, tourism. Those are all vitally important parts of the city's services that we provide. So, things like you see that we're doing out around the lake, police and fire protection services are vitally important. And so the general fund monies helps our shared monies that we receive and or collect are used to help fund those operations. So yeah, an accurate count is critically important. Any number less than what we have today is going to impact our budget in a negative way.
Because it's the same formula, just based completely on that population.
Correct.
So if you had less than
That's correct.
21.8, whatever you said, you're going to have
It's less money we're going to have to operate
work
with.
with.
That's
That
correct.
makes sense.
And the other thing maybe to add on to that that's also important is that census number is locked for 10 years. So once you get it in 2020, that's that number for 10 years. So that's why it's really, really important that we get the right number at the beginning of the census.
Now, Beth, for you obviously represent Eastern on this group. Talk about the group and kind of what you're doing on campus to try to get the word out.
Yeah, so I'm embarrassed to say that I didn't know exactly what the census was used for, other than obviously getting a snapshot of how many people and the demographics within that we have in the country, until I started learning a little bit more about the census. I didn't know that it impacted where hospitals go and where businesses go, and every single city, the money that they get from the census. And so the more that I learned about the census, I just kept feeling like it impacted more and more pieces of this community that we're all calling home. And then, in 2010, I don't remember taking the census. I was, a working adult in 2000. I was in college. I definitely didn't take the census then. And so we just have been thinking about, from a civic engagement standpoint, how can we help spread the word for our students that because they are living here, they are a part of this community, that they need to fill out the census on April 1st. And so we're going to be creating, a marketing strategy, just like has been mentioned, geared specifically for our EIU students and those living off campus, so that they can be much more aware.
It should be no fooling. Do it April 1st.
Oh, well done.
Just hit me right
got
there.
it.
I'm out. See you guys.
I'll
Wow.
give you full credit for that. But just helping our students be more connected to the community, more understanding of what their role being engaged with being part of this community is than I was when when I was in their spot.
Is it mandatory to take the census? Are you obligated by law if you're over 18, or what are the rules of the census taking? Does anybody know?
I think it's, obviously it's written in law that, everyone is to be counted and take that count, but I don't think there's any penalties, those sort of things. But we really do encourage everybody to be counted because, like Beth said, we're all part of this community and every dollar helps. Folks say, hey, there's a broken sidewalk here, or there's this, that, there. That money can go help fix those things. And without those numbers, those things may not be repaired. But also to kind of get back on Beth's point, one of the things that her group, Civic Group, was able to do this fall was we do a Good Neighbors program where we actually go door to door to all the new off-campus residents and give them information. And part of our information packet was information on the census and how important it was and be counted, and also our census jobs and these kind of things. So we have already started that effort as far as the marketing, and it's something we're going to continue all the way up till April 1st.
Now, do people, can they kind of pre-register to be reminded for April 1st, or is it just one thing that the website or whatever, the app opens up on April 1st? Do you know how that process goes?
So it's my understanding that they will give advance notification to everybody, let them know, hey, the census is coming, be counted. I don't know if that's going to all be done online or just all in the mail. But like we said last year, one of the things we have to do is make sure that all of the city's addresses are given to the Census Bureau. So they have now, like I said, all 9,000 of our address records that hopefully everyone there will have a card or get some information saying the census is coming. And hopefully everyone takes that seriously, and when they get their information, they can move forward. My guess is, because the internet, the internet part is new, is that card will give instructions on how to log in, how to set up a username, and then do your census online would be my guess.
The one thing people always ask, when you're doing something online or any kind of survey is it confidential?
Sure. And this is U.S. Census Bureau, so it's going to be as confidential as the government's going to be, right? So everything they have there, will be confidential as far as we understand. And what questions, the differences between online and the paper questionnaire, just don't know. So.
Okay. And do we know what kind of questions? I know that's been in the news a lot. That the president wanted to have some questions in. Other people wanted to have questions in. Has that been set yet for the questions, or?
So last I heard was the proposal that he had did not go through, and so this my guess is that the census questionnaire will be very similar to 2010. I do understand that it's going to be less. There'll be less information that they're asking for, because I remember in 2010 doing the census, it seems like we were filling out a book of information, and now it's going to be shortened to try to get more responses that way.
Let's go over to schools a little bit. And now, when you talk about, again, Scott was talking about, the money, obviously we know that schools, does this go to salary? Will this go to infrastructure, or how does
Nope, these are all federal grants.
All grants?
The only salaries that are impacted by the title grants are the Title I intervention teachers. So, which is, for right now, there's about 8 teachers in the district that service Title I students. Primarily, that money is based on the socioeconomic status. So the more low-income families, the more supports that can go into those Title I services.
Okay.
Those are critical for our students who struggle with reading and math.
Okay. And this is had nothing to do with taxation, right, Scott? No, this is all about a formula based on a government setup?
Correct.
Okay. Is it all federal money, or does it affect state? How's that work? Is it?
Well, it's all passed through and into the states, yeah.
Okay.
And like I said, there's two pools there. What Chris is talking about there are it's kind of on the grant side, which a lot of times that is federal pass-through, like Scott said. But like we talked about, there's also our state shared revenues, which all do stay in Illinois. So those are really local dollars. So when you go fill up your car with gas and pay the motor fuel tax on that money gets put into a pool and then it gets distributed back to the community. So there is local money at stake here, state money and federal money.
Okay. I was going to ask, I don't think you guys can answer this yet. If someone says, because a lot of people, everybody says they're so busy they can't do anything. But do you know how, like last time you said 2010, it took a long time. So you get an idea, like, do they give you, like, on some of the pamphlets, how long it will take to actually take the census part if you're a family, or?
One of the questions that we did ask our census reps was, like, for a copy of what the questionnaire will look like, which we have not received yet. We're hoping it will be short, several minutes and be kind of through with it, way different than, like I said, we back in 2010. So hopefully they've shortened it enough where we won't lose attention and that people get those completed. The other thing, too, is, like we said, April 1st is count day. One of the things that we've really put a lot of pressure on the Census Bureau about is to make sure that when they do their follow-up, for those who did not give their information back to the Census Bureau, when they do their door-to-door follow-up, that we do it before the university leaves for the end of term. So there's going to be a short window there between April 1st and the last day of classes, to where we're going to try to capture
5 weeks probably.
Yeah, so we're going to try to capture as many people between April 1 and May whatever, before end of classes. So.
Now, what is the actual cutoff date if someone is forgot out of town or whatever? There has to be a cutoff date for the count, right?
Yeah, so August 2020 is roughly the time where they're going to say, okay, we've got our count, and then they deliver that to the president at the end of the year and make their announcement at the end of the year.
Now, what's needed right now? Do you guys need volunteers, workers, obviously getting the word out and things like that, but what else is needed to let people know that April 1st is an important day for just not Charleston, but for any town, people that are listening this morning? Or this afternoon now?
I'd say one of the things that we're doing right now is just spreading the word. The very cool thing is that the Mattoon Chamber and the Charleston Chamber of Commerce's have come together, and they're putting together a community update breakfast where we have invited somebody from the U.S. Census Bureau to come in and talk about the importance of the census and what it means to communities like ours. And that is open to the public. There is a small cost affiliated to get your ticket, but we've got spots for, I believe, up to 300 people, and that's going to be on Thursday, November 7th. So that would be a really good way to come and hear from the census experts. I am definitely far from a census expert, but to come hear from those who can specifically answer these questions, who have access to a lot more information, and to come and learn. So I would say, once we start pushing things on social media, if you see that coming from the city of Charleston, you can trust that it's accurate information. Please share it, because the more information that's out there, the more inundated we are feeding our social media pages, the more likely that someone's going to see that and be like, oh yeah, I need to be counted. Like, I count, so I need to fill this survey out so that I can help make sure that my community has the resources it needs.
At the school district, we plan on similarly sharing information with our families and, our staff to ensure that we're getting the word out as best as we can. So I would say the same. If you see anything from the school district on the census, share and spread the word.
And a couple things on that. The speaker that we have for the Community Leaders Breakfast, her name is Marilyn Sanders, and she is the Chicago Regional Director for the U.S. Census Bureau. So it's a really high position. I believe she reports to the Treasury Secretary directly. So she's coming down to talk to our area about this. And like Beth said, we've invited the whole East Central Illinois Development Corporation, ECIDC, and all 16 counties or whatever it is that they represent. So there'll be a big crowd with a really, really good speaker. And thanks to the schools, because they've already started putting up posters for the kids to go home and tell mom and dad about, and it's part of your curriculum. So one last thing I did want to talk about as far as our Complete Count Committee, I'll forget somebody, but we have a great cross-section between the schools and Eastern and the library. We have the Chamber of Commerce, Carl Clinic, Sarah Bush Lincoln. No, I'm going to forget other folks, but it's the tourism director, the chamber. So we have a lot of folks cross-section on that committee who are all getting out to their constituents to get the word out.
Yeah, I think that seems to be the key right now. Education, get the word out, and then people will more than likely do it. And if it's online, I think that also makes it a little bit easier. The April 1st thing is you know how they came up with that date? Is that just because?
I think that's set by law. I think it's April 1st every 10 years. I think that's set by law.
Now, what about college students whose parents say, hey, no, we need to be counted back home because it affects our home? Do they have a choice, or is it where they live only?
So what the census rule is where you are on April 1st is part one of that, and then part two is where you live the majority of the year. So that's why we tell college students that, Charleston is where you should be counted for your census, and to let them know to not just, all of us, to not just ignore this when we get it in the mail, to take it serious, to get that information back, and again, to count everybody who's in that location and not just yourself.
Now, this happens in a college town. You got a 4-person apartment,
Sure.
but there's 8 people in there. What happens there?
Just count all 8. That's the key. Obviously, what'll happen is they count the 4 census. We'll look at it that way, but we're really part of our marketing is to let everybody know to count everybody that's in that house.
What have you all learned being on this committee that you didn't know about the census, besides the fact you're supposed to take it, Beth? Has stuff been kind of shocking? Like, I didn't know that.
Just the amount of effort that goes into it, Jeff, is amazing to me, and the number of people and resources it takes to get the word out, both physically boots on the ground and just getting the word out from a marketing perspective. It takes an army really to get this done, and so that's what's most important to me and what I've learned a lot. And I know all the work that Steve's put into this along with the committee on the back end, and people have no idea the amount of time just in researching the address lists that we've gotten and double checking that and then sending that information off in advance, the time spent to do that. And we're fortunate that we have people on staff that can do that.
Other thing.
I think each of us on the committee has learned a lot about how the census data impacts each of our various organizations. I mean, there were things I didn't realize how the census data impacted the city, and I know they've learned how that data impacts us, and I think it's been a really great educational experience for all of us.
Beth, does the census help Eastern? Have you learned? I mean, it's in the.
Yes, because it helps the community that we're all living in. You know, when I think about what are things that are relevant to college students, the more people that we have, the more accurate that our number is, the more likely, you know, especially as our numbers continue to grow and Charleston gets more people, then we'll be more likely to be able to attract new businesses, which, you know, obviously the college students are and all of us are excited about. So yes, it does. Does it affect EIU from a financial standpoint? Not in the same way that it affects the school districts or the city, but it absolutely affects our day-to-day life as people who live right here in this community.
And there's no doubt about that. You know, on the economic development side alone, and like I said, learning from Sarah Bush and from Carl and from the schools, you know, how this affects them was an eye-opener for us. But again, from the economic development side, Beth's absolutely right. You know, when we're out there, you know, in our recruiting efforts, you know, for new business to come to town, new restaurant, is one of the things they ask is, what is your population, what's your gross median income, and all these kind of questions are all so census driven, and to have those numbers accurate and to have them complete, you know, really helps some of those places site here in Charleston and come locate here, which then directly affects, you know, Eastern students going to those places. So
I know you said you don't have the example census for some of the questions, but if you can think back, do you know stuff that you know that they can't ask or they won't ask, so people aren't like, oh, I don't want to get in that because it's going to get into religion or politics or anything like that? Can you?
Yeah, well, I guess the one thing too, and we talked to the census folks, is if you don't answer every question, I'm sure it's going to be one of those things where they don't just discard it, right? If there's questions on there that make you uncomfortable, then obviously you have that right, you know, that choice to answer those or not answer them. But when I filled that out last time, I did not recall anything that was overly sensitive to me. You know, they do ask some questions. The biggest thing for us is the number of people, how many people live there, and then there's a whole subset of questions after that. What's your gross median income? You know, how many, you know, do you own or do you rent your house, and all these kind of things. But for us, it's the number of folks that are in Charleston is really the critically important part. So if they
that's
can
really
do
what
that,
you guys would, I don't say only care about, but that's really the most important part is the number, right?
Yeah, that's the most important part. And then we do look at our other grant funding for other things like low to moderate income folks and median income and these kind of things, which is important to the schools as well. But the most critical is how many folks live there.
Any idea, this is a completely stupid question to ask, but how accurate is this thing overall? I mean, when you think, I mean, is there a variance on it, do you think, overall, when you think about it?
I suppose there has to be some estimates in there somewhere, but I will tell you, like from last year, or from 2010, we had a roughly 78% participation rate in the mail, which was pretty good for a town. In 2000, I think that number was closer to 72 or 74. So we started our complete count committee in 2010, and we were able to increase the response rate. We're hoping to be over 80%, 85%. And when you do that, then the folks who are going door to door will have a lot less work to do, and it'll be more accurate. So to circle back to your question, I suppose there probably are some formulas in there, you know, for those who don't fill it out, but hopefully that number will be so small that we'll get a true count.
You mentioned this 9,000 addresses. Does that mean that there's 9,000 like livable addresses in Charleston? Is that what that means?
Yeah, there's 9,000 different units should get a postcard in the mail saying complete the census.
Okay, I figured that's what I was. I didn't want to seem completely stupid. So,
and those are all apartments. You might have one apartment building that has 30 addresses in it, right? So, so it's around 9,000 is our total addressable or billable locations.
Okay, that's interesting. Anything that I missed before we get into more of the rapid fire fun questions? Anything that you want to
I would just point out, as it was mentioned about the community update breakfast is Thursday, November the 7th. If individuals would like more information on that, they can contact the Charleston or Mattoon Chambers, and they'll be happy to send them some information.
And I can tell you, when I did my research this morning, if you just Google U.S. Census, there's tons of information out there for anybody that's listening and wants to find out and kind of understand what's coming up. And so it's real simple. And I'm sure all the different websites you guys are associated with will have a census button on there.
Well, and yes, it will. And one more thing before those other questions too is one of the things we didn't mention is the Census Bureau is actively recruiting for workers right now.
That's what I wanted. I think Beth said something like that. So yeah.
Yeah, and right now I think there's some roughly 200 positions open in our area. So if people wanted part-time work or do something a little bit more than that they pay, I don't remember what it is, but it's very good.
I feel like it's $14 an hour.
$14 an hour for a part-time position, but they're looking for 200 more people, and that is almost as important as the folks who are actually filling the information out, because you know you have people out there going door to door and making sure everybody's counted is important.
Nick, new money to the town too.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're
Yeah.
not paying that; somebody else is. So
That's right.
That's fresh cash for the town, so that's good. So just contact the city, and then I guess.
Yeah, contact the city or go to the Census Bureau. You can apply online, and like I said, 200 is the number that they need right now.
That's sweet. So a little part-time job opportunity out there with the census for 2020. All right, rapid fire questions, all number related. That's where it all tied in since we're numbers. So we're going to go down the road, ladies and gentlemen. So your favorite number? We'll start easy.
14.
I don't know.
You don't know your favorite number?
I will also go with 14. How about that?
7.
23.
23. Your guess for Charleston's population on the 2020 census? It was
21,848, I think it was.
last time.
All right, let's go with 22.5.
22,031.
I'll go 22,000.
I'll see that, and I'll go 22 as well.
There you go. Your favorite math teacher or professor, his or her name was?
Mrs. Johnson in 6th grade.
All right.
I liked English classes better, so I'm going to go with Mrs. Hobb.
Mr. Longfellow.
Math?
Did you take math, Scott?
I'll go with Mary Kay Smitley in the high school.
While taking math classes, were you better at multiplication or division?
Multiplication.
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 I as well.
Hey, are you superstitious of the number 13?
No.
No.
Elevator?
No.
Doesn't?
No.
No, my daughter's born on the 13th.
So nobody's super. I thought I would get a couple on that one. Arithmophobia is
Fear of math.
fear of numbers. So
Fear of numbers,
yeah. Your favorite movie with the number in the title, and there's lots of these, but so when you think of it, your favorite movie, Kristen, or we'll go anybody if something comes to mind.
Ocean's 10 or 11.
Ocean's 10. That's good, Scott. Very good. Steve.
I kind of like Magnificent Seven.
That's good. Or just 7. Remember 7?
Well, 7 was a little bit dark. So
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a stretch, but what about the spirit of the marathon? Because the marathon is 26.
We'll give it to you because you're such a good friend.
Okay, thank you.
Even though you picked
I
English
guess
teacher for math.
One of the Ocean's 11s, maybe. Yeah, that's a tough one.
The taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3 was also one that came to my mind
that's a
this
good
morning.
one, yes.
Yeah, there you go. Home phone number growing up, do you remember it?
yes.
Nobody needs to say it out.
248-602-2401.
Scott, you remember your home number growing up here in Chucktown?
I used to know, and I just drew a blank, Jeff.
When I did this one, it came out of my head. 235-0267. And that's it at the Owens house.
345. It'll come to me.
All right, that's all I have, and I still have a minute to get to continue on before we're out of time. So, anything else that people want to talk about for the Census 2020? This floor is yours, everyone.
Yeah, we are going to be, so we do currently right now, Grandma's Got Gmail, where we go to the Charleston Library and we help seniors figure out their technology. So we actually had a woman who sent her very first text message last week. We were very excited. And we're going to be doing help with Census instead in April. So if people need help and are wanting somebody to help them walk through this process, we will be offering help with our EIU students to make that happen at the Charleston Library.
Kristen?
We just want to encourage people to get ready for April 1st and take the census.
For me, it's thank you to all the different agencies and folks who have been part of this so far, to date, and just again reiterating how important it is for all Eastern students to be counted, how important it is for everybody in the community to be counted, because like Beth said, we're all in the same community, and every person we count, everything that we do more accurate and better will benefit the community in a lot of different ways. So, and we're obviously thanks to Eastern and hosting us here to have this, because getting the message out to Eastern students will be critical.
Thank you so much. We're out of time. Appreciate it all. Census 2020, April 1st.